Alrighty, how you doing, folks? Brian here with another Q&A session. Another question we get is, how do you build a program, like a housing program? How do you think that through? How do you start that? Where do you start? What do you do? So check out some of our other podcasts about how to get the building and how to get started. In this one, we're going to talk about program development and how do you run these programs for people that help people. So foremost in this, and this is again presuming that you've already got a building, you've got a place to put people, whether that's a place that you own or that you lease or that you rent, or we've had some dream centers who they house their people with other providers, and then they do the case management, they do the programming with them, however it is. But assuming you have somewhere for people to stay, the first thing really is to identify the need, and that's first in our mission: find a need and fill it, find a hurt and heal it. And so if you break that mission apart, the find a need part is really kind of akin to outreach. So it's getting out there, finding out what truly the needs are, and it's two purposes. It's finding out what those needs are, but then part two of that is finding out what is the feasibility of you and your group, your church, meeting those needs. You will find, no doubt, that your city is inundated and overwhelmed with needs. The needs are greater than what our government can take care of, than what anybody can take care of. They need us. Let me call my wife back here real quick. Anytime in the morning, period. So the needs in your community are huge. Once you have identified what need your group is going to go after, you need to evaluate the feasibility of that. And what we mean by that is it is one thing to house a homeless man who's 40 years old, who is very capable of working, who does not have a drug addiction, who just through a series of unfortunate events ended up homeless. It's one thing to house that guy, a completely another thing to house a pregnant 11-year-old girl who has high mental acuity, or who has high acuity needs. I mean, she has a lot, is a runner, is a cutter, is on drugs. We have that girl right now, and we're serving her. So serving that girl, very, very different program than serving the guy who's pretty capable. So identifying the need, evaluating the feasibility of that. Your group, can your group do that? The next one is one that my board they're really good about keeping me accountable to this, and it's to count the cost. To count the cost in pennies and in manpower and just emotional cost. So, for example, we had a year ago the opportunity to expand some of our work in Arizona to northern Arizona, to a small community up in northern Arizona, and I was going through contract negotiations to get the property and working with the county, the city council, and but also at the same time I needed to work with my church and my mentors and my pastors, and to one of the things that they really wanted to know was, Brian, what is the cost of this to your family? And so I knew the question was coming. I know to count the cost, and so I had drawn out for them, and it ended up being like a 3-page document. Like, this is the cost to me personally, to my family. We've talked about it. This is how much time I'll spend up in this other site every month. This is how much time I'll spend down here that'll take away from my other Dream Center responsibilities here in Phoenix. And so my point is, I counted the cost personally to me. And for some of you, it might be counting the cost of your board members or your pastors or your volunteers. But there's a cost, and you never know the entirety of the cost. You just never know. It always ends up costing more, it seems like. But you need to count the cost. We have some formulas in our packet that you can have write to us, and we'll get you that drive. But on our program development budgets for developing a new program, you'll see itemized, exhaustive lists that our accounting team does, but we have hundreds of line item codes for expenses for things that maybe you wouldn't even have thought about. Of course, with let's take the 11-year-old that we're housing. So it's literally 100% everything. She needs everything. She cannot get anything on her own. She can't get food on her own, diapers for the baby coming up on her own, her own medical expenses, her own vitamins. 100% of everything needs to come, and she constantly consumes. She goes to school, and so there's books and there's papers, and it's like raising a high needs 11-year-old is exactly what it's like. Times there are 36 girls over there that are in her same situation. So counting the cost becomes very important. Next step. The next step that I have outlined here is to go to your leadership. Now, this is not to say that you haven't gone to them up to this point, but as you're developing a program or a new program, I suggest having as much of these other things kind of already done as you can. Sometimes in your church, it's your pastor who has a vision, who has a dream, who identifies the need, but then someone needs to come in and do the feasibility, and obviously if God has called you to it, God's going to help you through it. And so your feasibility study is not to see whether or not you can, it's to see how hard it's going to be, because you're going to do it, right? You're going to get through it. And then counting the cost, and then going to leadership. Now for me here in Phoenix, that's going to Pastor Tommy and to my board and saying, hey, here's the need, and here's the feasibility of it, right? You see how this is going? This is exactly how my presentation is laid out. This is the need. This is the feasibility of it. This is the cost that it's going to have to our agency and to me personally. And now I'm here for your prayers and to talk this through, and for you to beat me up like you do every time that this happens. And then I'll go home and I'll cry on my hour-long drive home, and I'll sit in the corner and cry. Oh no, that's we're not getting into that today. That happens someday when I see you. We're just going to hold hands and cry for like the first minute, because it's tough. It's tough stuff, but you get through it, right? Okay, so you go to leadership, and you get the sprinkle, oil, holy, and you get going, right? Like that's next. The next step is to prepare the team. Boy, I tell you, I say this with a heavy heart. Then, well, let me say it a different way. So, the dream centers that I see, and I've been doing Dream Conference for 10 years now, and no longer than that, 15 years now. And but 10 years I've been teaching up there. Year after year, I see two types of Dream Center leaders. I see one type who the next year they come back, and maybe it's been a hard year, and maybe it's been tough, but they've grown. They've personally grown. The ministry's grown. They've done it. They've achieved what they were trying to achieve. But then there's a second group that I see them year after year, either going nowhere, making no progress, or I see them greatly and deeply troubled and burdened by the struggle. And when I look at the two groups, one of the, not the only, but one of the defining characteristics, truly defining characteristics of the ones that make it, is that they go from a me team to a we team. They go from a me team to a we team. It is your heart and your calling and your burden that God has put on your heart to start a Dream Center. And honestly, very few people, possibly nobody, will ever feel as deeply committed and motivated to the dream as you do. But you can't do it all. You just cannot do it all. I've been there. Our pastors have. We've all been there and tried to do it all, and we can't do it all. And what ends up happening is we get burned out, and we get frustrated, or we shortcut and shortchange and take shortcuts, and things fail. It doesn't work. You can't do this alone. And so you have to go from a me team to a we team. Let me put it in terms like this. A mentor once taught me that so you've got a dream to start a Dream Center. And what we all do naturally is we have the what, what we want to do, and we have the why. Often God has called us to do this. It's very important. God has called us to do this. But the thing I think that we and if you think about it, it's like the epitome of selfishness. But the thing that many of us fail to do is we don't think about the who. We think we know the who. We think the who is us, right? We think the who is me, and God called me, and so I'm the who, and so I'm going to do it. But one of the most profound changes in my own thinking when it comes now to new properties, and I don't just say this as helping start our Phoenix Dream Center. I say this with all humility, helping to start 42. I think now we got 43 coming up in Central Arizona. I'm so excited about 43. But just me personally, with Pastor Tommy, been a part of 42 Dream Centers now, and the number one thing I start to look for, I go into them thinking, where's the who? Who's the who? Who is going to do this part? Who's the person that God's called to do this? I'm just the orchestrator. I'm just the one pulling people together. Who's the who? And when you can find the who in any equation, truly you have made progress. And sometimes you're the who. Sometimes you're the janitor when you first start out. You're the business person. You're the accountant. You're the social media person. Hey, I've been there, and I'm still there in some areas. Like sometimes the who is you, and it's all you. But unless the who grows, you won't grow, and the who won't grow, and the what won't grow, and the why won't be reached and realized. We're getting all Dr. Seussy. I'm going to stop. So finding the who is a critical part of realizing the dream and the mission. So preparing the team is the next part. Prepare the place is next. Now, we talked in other videos about how to get a building and how to get in a building, but now we're talking about program development. And so when we say prepare the place, we're not just talking about get the building. We're talking about the little subtlety things of how are you gonna lay out the rooms? Are you gonna have bunk beds? Are you gonna have single beds? If it's people who hurt themselves, are you going to remove all glass? We've got one floor at our Dream Center Phoenix. We don't have any glass on it, or everything breaks away at 70 pounds because people are hurt, and sometimes they hurt themselves when they're hurt, right? So preparing the place becomes critical. I will also tell you that if you are helping the homeless and people who are coming out of homeless situations and coming out of really seedy, shady hotels with their clothes, like they're going to have bed bugs, and they're going to have lice, and they're going to have scabies, and like you are going to deal with this type of stuff. If I don't care if you're in small town America or big city. Big city urban area, like you're gonna see this stuff, and how do you deal with that? There are some things you can do as far as beds go to protect them from bed bugs. You can caulk and seal joints in rooms and along baseboards. Paint color schemes can be calming and soothing, and there's a lot you can do. Contact us and we'll walk you through kind of the aesthetics part of how to prepare the place for people. But once you've prepared the place, you need to prepare the program. And so program development is an exciting thing. We love developing new programs. I think at the Dream Center, my wife and I especially have been called to develop human trafficking, foster care, and homeless programs, discipleship-based programs. But your next step is really to begin preparing the program. And the program, honestly, think about it in terms like this. Like if you go to school, if you go to college, you get that outline of what you're going to do throughout your day in school, right? And there's a plan for graduating. You're going to go to so many classes, and then you're going to go to these classes and those classes, and the goal is to progress you. And so the program essentially is a plan. It's a map for moving that person through your facility. And so programs are as vastly different as the people that you're serving. And so one of the starting places, though, for any program is that I think of is start with the time frame. And so depending on your permitting, your licensing, you're going to have people with you for X amount of days. We have some programs where the permitting only allows for 30 days, some 90 days, some 6 months, some a year, but almost all of your licensing or your permitting is going to have some requirement that you move people on at some point. Otherwise, you're not a program. Like a program typically has some time defining characteristic. However, I will say that for our human trafficking program, it's more of a completion date. So there's evaluations along the way, and they are completed at a certain time. But that's all still, again, within the context of it's a 1-year licensing program. Now you can keep them there longer than 1 year, but they have to have progressed into a different part of your program, and blah blah blah. But starting with your program, that's how you're going to know people. What are you going to do for people? In general, very much in general, people who are in addiction recovery or who have addiction recovery in their background, you're going to want some addiction classes. Celebrate Recovery is for us a phenomenal curriculum. We'll have a separate podcast just on curriculum and types of programming, but you'll want to define that program. And folks are going to want to go to class, or they're going to be work training programs. Maybe your program is not classes and not therapeutic or anything. Maybe it's just that people are there, they sleep there, they eat there. In the morning they meet with the caseworker, and then during the day they're out and they're looking for work. If folks are what we call higher functioning, that works very well for them. But you're going to want to have a plan whereby, and I think these are the keys, you evaluate people wherever they're at in the beginning. You determine goals for where they want to be in the end, whatever the end is. And then in between the evaluation and the goals, that's your program. That's what you want to do. You're on that path to help people to graduate. For the homeless and people in addiction recovery, you're giving them the tools to maintain their sobriety. For girls and boys, we have a boys human trafficking program now for girls and boys in trafficking. Part of the program is a lot of medical healing and behavioral health healing for them. So that's built into their program, as well as emotion regulation. For some of our younger kids and some of our younger people, high school is a part of the program. It's part of the program requirement for people. So preparing the program is key. And then the next part is prepare the services. So the next step is to prepare the services that you're going to offer. And I don't just mean church services, although I do mean church services too. I also mean the services that you're going to add beyond the program. So you're going to have a program with program requirements, rules, regulations, things like that. But how are you going to serve people? Like if someone has an addiction problem, what service are you rendering to them? Whether it's medical or therapeutic or behavioral health, what services are you going to give to them? What medical services? And now don't think in terms with any of this of things that you have to do and you have to pay for. But you do have to have a plan for it. And so maybe you're not the one going to do AA, but you have a list of resources around that you give to your people, and you require them to go to that AA service or to that class or to that place. They have to get signed off, and they come back, and you do it that way. So preparing the services is next. Like what are the services you're going to give them? This would include the meals that you're going to give them. Are they going to prepare their own meals? Are you preparing the meals? If it's licensed and permitted, you get into food nutrition and making sure that they're getting enough of their nutrition. But preparing the services, knowing what the services are. Next, then is to go slow, but to start to take people in and to bring people into your program, to start to prepare the way. What is the referral network? How are you going to get people? Where are they going to come from on a steady and a consistent basis? So working on the referral method, taking people in, is kind of your next step. Hopefully, if you have already done outreaches, Like if you've already started your outreaches, then you're already a long ways toward getting the referrals that you need. For some of you, if it's minors that you're going into, many of your referrals are going to come from the state or from law enforcement, and so working that out with them. But you need to figure out how to get referrals. But then you go slow and you start to take in clients, and you help them. Like you legit help them. I think one of the very first dynamics that you're going to run into is people who are hurt are hard to help. And they don't always appreciate you. They don't always appreciate your help. And so you're not looking for people who appreciate you. They're nice. It's great. You'll get them. You'll get people who love you. They'll make videos for you all day long, how thankful they are for you. But honestly, that how appreciative they are cannot be a prerequisite to that person needing help. Like we've never thought that was the example that the Lord gave us, was that people have to appreciate it and love us back and be easy to help in order to help them. We're going to help them no matter how hard they are to help, right? So you start to take in clients, you go slow, you help them, and then at some point you send them out. Like you get them out of your bed. Those are my two favorite days for our programs at the Dream Center. Is the first day people come, and then the day they leave. Like those are my favorite days, right? Because the first day they come, like anything is possible. Like anything, from the moment people walk into a Dream Center, anything's possible. The sky's the limit. Like there are going to be challenges, and they're going to be going through some stuff, but like anything's possible in their life at that point on. It's absolutely amazing. And then my second favorite day is the day that they leave, the day that they move on, because I know that they're moving into that next step. And I think the same thing is true. At that point, a sober person with a good mind and a good wrap on life and a job and a little bit of savings, like anything is possible for them as well. Really cool. So that's the next step, is that you graduate them, you send them out, and then the final phase, we're going to have a whole nother blog on this next time, and the final phase is probably, not probably, the final phase I would talk about, it is the most significant thing that you can do to improve your program, to grow your program, to get funding for your program. And it is to evaluate your program, to honestly look at how you're doing and throw out what doesn't work, keep what does work, and retool and reboot. There is a phase in engineering that we use in social services, certainly at our Dream Centers here in Arizona, called DOE. And you can look it up. It's Design of Experiments. And essentially the philosophy is that anything we're doing today is essentially an experiment. We're experimenting to find out how well it works. Not that people are an experiment, but that our efforts are always an experiment. We're not committed to our efforts today because we know that tomorrow they may change. I've found, especially in our youth programs, that every 4 or 5 years, you've almost got to reinvent the whole program because you're serving different kids, different kiddos, and they came up different. They have different issues, and so this final phase, we're going to have a whole other chapter in it, because I'm pulling up to the Dream Center now, and we're going to talk about how do you evaluate your program's performance, how do you measure your success rates, which is in another video. Check that one out. But how do you always do better? Like we always want to do better. God bless you guys. See you next time. Bye-bye.